I want to simply explain what we're talking about here. You could have a citizen of Russia that illegally crosses our southern border, pays cartels, comes across our southern border, and decides to set up shop in California. That citizen of Russia that can still vote for Vladimir Putin all day long also is counted in the distribution of electoral votes in the United States, therefore having influence, therefore shaping who is president of the United States. I don't know what else could possibly be foreign interference in elections than what we're talking about today. This is 100% about stacking the vote, about foreign interference in elections, about incentivizing sanctuary cities. That's what this does. It actually takes American taxpayer dollars through the formula funding influenced by the census, and it gives it to states that have illegal aliens. This is completely outrageous. I can't even believe we're standing here having this debate. Vote yes if you want Americans to be represented, and vote no if you think Russians and Chinese and others should be represented.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I'm delighted to hear someone on that side of the aisle denounce Vladimir Putin, and I thank him for his remarks. We should definitely avoid putting in a president of the United States who looks up to Vladimir Putin and calls him a genius. But in any event, I could be persuaded by the gentleman's policy arguments, but then we've got to amend the Constitution. This is the way it's been done since the beginning of the Republic. The language in the 14th Amendment is perfectly clear that it's all of the persons of the state who have to be counted. I thought you guys were constitutional textualists. I thought you followed the language of the Constitution, the original intent of the Constitution, and the precedent that has been set. I could be persuaded by it. I don't like the fact that Texas and Florida, or any state for that matter, gets an inflated congressional delegation because of this reason or that. Let's have that discussion. But you got to amend the Constitution. You can't just say, well, I don't like what's in the Constitution, and therefore I'm going to ignore it.
This legislation will require U.S. citizens to include a question that asks if the person is a United States citizen. Just a question. This bill passed through the House Oversight Committee on a straight party line vote, 22-20, and not a single Democrat supported it. The census informs how our government divides up congressional districts and electoral college votes. Mr. Speaker, it helps to ensure American voters have equal representation, American voters. That process should not factor in people who are not citizens or not eligible to vote. You can see why my Democrat colleagues would have a problem with this bill. Factoring illegal aliens into the process skews things in their favor. In fact, it wasn't very long ago that a member of the minority party was on the news claiming that they wish that more illegals would come to their district for the census. If the census does not include the citizenship question, states with more illegal aliens will get more congressional districts and more electoral college votes. We have a history of saying that elections are sacred and that free, fair, and secure elections are the cornerstone of this great republic, Mr. Speaker. It's time to act like it and prioritize the dadgum representation of our people.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized, and we're glad to see your head of hair too, Jamie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always great to be with my friend from Tennessee. Just two quick points on his always trenchant remarks. One is that one should be clear that under this legislation, they're not roping out of the reapportionment just undocumented people. They're also roping out of the reapportionment permanent residents, people who are green card holders who are on the pathway to citizenship already. So they're talking about disenfranchising from the census reapportionment process millions of people who are lawfully within it. And they should be aware of that. Also, if we were being cynical politically, we would embrace this legislation because it's the red states like Texas and Florida whose congressional delegations are inflated by virtue of counting people who are not citizens. We're simply trying to follow what the Constitution says, which I know is kind of a radical proposition around here these days.
That's a lot of words from the opposition to this bill to say that citizenship does not matter. That's basically their argument. We don't care if you're a citizen. In fact, they are encouraging you to not be a citizen. Sanctuary cities and states invite everyone from the world to flood their cities, and they need it. They've said as much in interviews that their population is fleeing their horrible policies in states like California, Illinois, Maryland, and elsewhere, New York, and they're going to places that have more freedom and less government. So what do? They import new people who don't know better. And yes, the conditions are better there than the places they're fleeing. But as my colleague, Mr. Graves, was pointing out, California's got 6 to 7 members. That's more than many of our states. Yes, Texas has representatives because they too have a large illegal population. And the Biden administration is doing everything possible to prevent them from stopping this invasion of our country. It is willfully and purposefully, and I will add skillfully, undermining the value of U.S. citizenship to flood this country with non-citizens. We have to defend the value and right of U.S. citizens. And the only way to do that is to do the very purpose of the census, is to apportion representatives. Now, we get a lot of other ancillary benefits from the census, but the constitutional purpose of it is to know who is here. Now, they want to know everything else about you, how many hyphens you have in your ethnicity, national origin, what you believe about your religion, how much you make, every other way they can invade your privacy, but they don't give a rip whether you're a United States citizen. The American people deserve to be fairly and equally represented, and that is the only way they're going to be done is if we know who's a citizen, and the apportionment is based on the United States citizens. This amendment needs to be passed. And for assurance, for the previous 3 Congresses, I've introduced a constitutional amendment. In this Congress, it's H.J. Res. 37. I assume Mr. Raskin will run down and co-sponsor it immediately because he knows that he could amend the Constitution and defend the principle that is at stake here. I urge all of our colleagues to sponsor this bill, to vote yes on this bill, and get it passed. And I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona reserved. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, why do you need to amend the Constitution if you can just go ahead and do it by statute here? That's rather curious. I think the gentleman doth protest a little bit too much. I admire the intellectual honesty in putting forth a constitutional amendment because that's precisely what needs to be done, and I'd be very happy to look at that and appreciate his candor in admitting that the Constitution needs to be amended in order to overturn more than 2 centuries of practice and everything the Supreme Court has ever said about the issue. It also should be clear to everybody that only U.S. citizens of majority may vote in federal elections. That's federal law. But everybody, including children who are U.S. citizens, are counted, even though they can't vote in federal elections. I'll reserve, Mr. Speaker.